program is a collaboration between Cipd Asia and People Collider, and it is a preview on transformative technologies for HR. We're going to run this session, as I mentioned earlier, as casual as we can. Just have conversations and use this opportunity to really find out more about the program and just unscramble any thoughts you might have. I'm sure both Pip and May will be happy to share their insights as well and to demystify transformative tech, okay, in the area of HR. Okay, moving along, perhaps just to get us going, how's everyone feeling today? Are you able to see this slide?
We can use the annotate.
Yes, you can use the annotate. You can also type in the chat box. Miss Blah. Great, that must be Pip. She's always feeling great. Brian, how are you feeling today? Let me get my chat box out.
Curious.
Curious, huh? Really nice. Okay, let the ladies demystify the session for you.
Oh, Mei Ling is excited, is she?
Say again?
Mei Ling is excited.
She is always excited, which is nice.
And excitable, perhaps occasionally.
Miss Excitable, Cipd Asia. Okay, and where are we connecting from today? I'm calling in from Singapore. May, Singapore as well. Pip must be Australia. And Brian, Malaysia, right?
Yep.
Cool. And I think, nice. Oopsie. Here we go. And which industry? We have technology, we have comms, transportation, education, learning education. Yes, very much. Anyone from government? Lately, we have seen a lot of participants from the government sector joining us for our previous sessions. So I think a lot of things are happening there. Okay, very nice. So we do have people from tech, from education. So let's see how our speakers will be able to weave in some of the conversations in those sectors, okay? So I'm going to bring on our two speakers now. Pip, she has very nicely introduced herself earlier, but just let me add on to that. She is also going to be our facilitator for this class, starting on the 19th of October. She has more than 20 years corporate HR experience before she moved to HR tech startup. She's a very highly sought after speaker. She's our HR tech expert, right? And globally recognized in HR technology as a thought leader. Okay, and an advisor and mentor with Workplace Accelerator. And she lectures regularly at Singapore University of Social Sciences. So thank you, Pip, for coming on this preview and sharing your thoughts with the participants later. May is from Asia, Cipd Asia. She's our regional head, and she has more than 15 years experience as a professional development and educator. Both in UK, and her experience also expands into Asia. She's an experienced consultant in HR and L&D practices. She's our actually content expert here in Asia. And she relocated from UK to Singapore, essentially to help Cipd establish our presence in Asia. Very passionate change maker. Those who have met her knows that her passion is really in enabling businesses to reach their full potential through the people. So this is fantastic. So welcome, May. Welcome, Pip. I will hand over the session to May for us to get the real conversation going on this program. Over to you, May.
Thank you, Charmaine, for that lovely and warm introduction. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today. So the plan for the preview is that we're going to start with a very casual conversation between myself and Pip around how transformative technology is relevant to HR. We'll then take a look at the program itself and how it's being delivered, and then end with some Q&A. So as Charmaine has mentioned, this really is designed to be very interactive and very casual. So at any point in time, if you've got any questions, feel free to use the chat box or to just unmute and ask us a question. So we'd love that interactivity. So I thought to start, I would set the scene a little bit. So as we all know, the world is changing faster and more furiously than ever. We are faced with unprecedented levels of uncertainty, political shifts, climate change, social and demographic changes. Workforce demographics is one that will always shift over time, and it happens in every country, impacting every industry and every business. By 2050, 62 countries, including China, will have a population where over a third are aged 60 or over. So of course, this will impact our workforce and our workplace significantly. Now, this gentleman that you see on screen at the moment, Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, he's Taiwanese-born American computer scientist. So he's generally the guy that's credited for Apple's breakthrough back in 1992, when the Apple Mac responded to spoken commands using plain English. So you can kind of think of it as the foundation for Siri and Bixby today. Now, he talks a lot about how the US is leading on tech discovery and innovation, whilst China is leading on tech implementation. So the result are these two huge engines running simultaneously to drive the fastest revolution in technology we've ever seen. Now the impact, so why does this matter? The impact, PwC have predicted that it will add 16 trillion US dollars of GDP to worldwide GDP by 2030, which is only 10 years away. Now, to put that into perspective, China's current GDP is 12 trillion. So that's a significant amount. Now, many folks do believe that COVID-19 is likely to have sped up the adoption of technology. It's accelerated many companies' digital transformation journey, converting those that were previously reluctant to engage with technology, and hence has pretty much dragged them kicking and screaming into and onto this journey. It's certainly increased our usage, both within and outside of work. So my first question to Pip, thank you for joining us today, by the way.
You're welcome.
Why does all this matter to HR? What does the digital transformation of organizations mean to us, and how does it impact us?
Thanks for asking, mate. HR is in quite a unique position where we need to be concerned and actively involved in both the transformation of business as well as the transformation of our function. Often when we think about HR tech, we think about it only in the sense of how is it affecting our function. But all the technology changes as it changes our business models, as it changes our employee makeup, and the skills and development they need, as it changed the way we work, the processes and the tools that we use, all of them impact our employees. And HR has a role to play in ensuring that that influence is a positive one. So our view of technology, the importance of technology is more than HR tech. It is tech in the workplace and how we are helping to shape and craft that. Separately, it's also, there's two levels personally. So we need to understand how we are transforming our function as HR professionals, but we also need to understand how we need to transform ourselves, our skills and development. HR are very good at looking at employees and working out what we need to develop, but we're not quite as good at doing it for ourselves. We usually don't prioritize our own needs as highly as we will other employees. But this has an impact on both our careers and how we are able to contribute to our workplaces and our function. And frankly, the future of HR and how we fit in it and the relevance from a career growth perspective. I'm sure we all agree that HR in 5 years' time is not going to look like 5 years, 10 years ago. In fact, HR today does not look like HR 5 years ago. So the question is, with this accelerating changes, change ramps up. How do we as HR professionals stay relevant? So we stay employable, we are able to contribute from a business perspective, but also from an HR perspective.
Thanks for that, Pip. So I know you started off as a HR practitioner. So is that where the inspiration for this program came from?
Yeah, it did actually. It goes back quite a long way. I started becoming interested in artificial intelligence back in 2013, before I even knew it was called AI. I think I had something like the Terminator in mind back then. But the more I got involved in the HR tech startup scene and the technology scene, the more I realized that there was a lot going on that I wasn't aware of. You know, I was redesigning performance management. I was doing, you know, business analytics dashboards. We were looking at, you know, lateral career moves or lattice career development for employees and consultants. All the I guess the typical more advanced HR stuff that we would do today. But I realized that actually it wasn't enough. What I was seeing internally was not enough for the changes that were ahead. And I saw that when I went and joined different communities. I'd start going to events and be the only HR person. As I learned about the technology, and I kept thinking, what does this mean for HR? How is this relevant to us? You know, the ultimate so what question. Nice to know, but so what? And I started to see that as things, like we talk a lot about AI and other technologies, but AI, we've got real concerns around ethics and bias, and HR must be able to have a voice in that discussion. And there's a number of them like this. So the question then is, do we have the competence, the capability, and the basic understanding that's necessary in the technology to be able to have those conversations? And the more I talked to people and the more I discovered the answer was no. In fact, they were leaving decisions about what tech to buy to IT people, or worse, to finance people. They were trusting their IT people to understand the right questions to ask, and just moving the entire process aside and going back into our comfort zone of soft skills and leadership, which we're really good at. So that's really where this program and People Collider started, is trying to fill the gap between HR and technology. We don't want to turn HR people into technologists. This is not a coding class. If you want to do coding, you've got to go somewhere else. I can't teach you to code either. But what we will do is have a discussion, and I will share knowledge and information about why this technology matters to HR, how it is influencing our function, and how we need to influence it rather than simply be shaped by it.
Makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned technologies. So, and I know you just mentioned AI. So we've actually collated a few different technologies that are already making waves in the workplace today. So if we can move on to, oh, there we go, this slide. So in the top corner there, we've got RPA, we've got virtual reality, and then augmented reality. We've got blockchain, machine learning, and then in the middle, we've got AI, artificial intelligence, and IoT, Internet of Things. So I'd like to ask the audience at this point, actually, does anyone out there particularly have an interest in any one of these areas, or are curious about any one of these areas? I'm sure we can get Pip to share some stories and some examples of how they're currently being implemented in the workplace.
Brian, feel free to choose.
I suppose at the moment, the one I'm particularly interested in, and the one I've been sort of getting to grips with, is using the, the likes of Zoom and similar platforms to have meetings more than before, but particularly for sort of teaching and doing classes.
Mm-hmm.
So that one has, I mean, I'd started to sort of get into it probably a few years ago. As Mei Ling mentioned, now we've sort of hook or by crook, we've been forced to get into it, sort of jump in with 2 feet. So that's been the main one that's been affecting me probably for the last sort of 6 or 7 months. And my learning curve has accelerated and been forced to accelerate. Yeah, so that's, I think also, to be perfectly honest, the analytics has been talked about an awful lot for an awfully long time. And I think, the AI side of it can help. Probably, I think my feeling is big companies more than the small companies, but that's certainly, it's getting a lot of airtime from what I can see the last sort of 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I'm not sure about I'm not sure if the airtime is being matched by the implementation of it. It also occurred to me when I was listening to you just now, the missing link for HR people has always been, they've always said HR people are not numbers people, but now it looks like the HR people also have to understand the numbers, they have to understand the IT, but also with AI, that's kind of where they sort of come together a bit with the analytics side, so those are two skill sets that I think, going to become more and more important. And also when you have a voice in the boardroom, you're going to have to be able to talk about both of these with at least some authority, I think. And I liked what you said about the fact that you can't leave it to the IT people and the finance people to make those decisions. You know, it's very dangerous to do that, you know.
Yeah. Great points, Brian. And I completely agree on the idea that let's face it, in HR, we didn't get into HR because we wanted to play with numbers and do tech. I mean, it sounds a bit harsh to say, but most of us did not want to work with the human side of the business because we were interested in the technical side of the business, the technology. In fact, most of us ran screaming from numbers into HR. I know I was one of those people. So in some ways, I feel like we've actually been cheated. You know, here's this job of people, you know, go and work with people, go and work out how to leverage them best for business. Oh, by the way, you've also got to understand technology and analytics. And most of us are really struggling. I admit, this can be really scary stuff. We don't know what we don't know, and we have no idea where to start. That's quite common. And not just for senior HR people, for everybody in HR. In fact, I find this with IT as well. So we all think that IT have the answers. In fact, they've got just as many questions. These technologies on the page are just as new for most of them as it is for us. So I find a lot of IT people actually like joining the program specifically so they can understand the basics of the technology and how it is influencing HR. So I do agree, Brian, we must focus on our skill sets, not just at the boardroom. You know, I was having a chat the other day about someone, and that horrible old phrase that makes us cringe. We need a seat at the table. No one likes that phrase anymore, and rightly so. When what we actually needed was the courage to sit down. And today, it is not the business that is as important as the technology. If you want to be a really strong HR person today, not only do we understand HR, not only do we understand the language of business and we can engage with our business, but we are able to do so in collaboration with IT. We need to bring HR, business, and technology together. I think businesses that can work where we've got a head of HR and a head of IT working very closely together, they are going to be the businesses that succeed in the future. The question is, how do we fill the gap between us? Because as we know, IT and HR, there's a lot of white space between us. I was
thinking that maybe HR people are the best placed to sort of help the IT guys, because the IT guys, if you take the stereotype, forgive me for this, they're not blessed with best communication skills, whereas the HR people are blessed with, you know, theoretically are blessed with the best people and communication skills. So maybe they are the ones to bridge the gap better than, you know, other functions and other departments, you know, so it could actually play really into the skill set of HR people.
Yeah. Do you know, if I could bottle and capture that comment, Brian, and blast it, I would, because I completely agree. And not to be disparaging of any of our IT colleagues at all, I do agree that the responsibility for filling this gap is ours. We have the capacity, the capability of being able to speak to people in different ilks, of different styles. I do think it is our responsibility to reach across and work out how we work with them more effectively. And that actually comes back to this program and how we're trying to help HR to do. We need a basic language. So HR speak HR and IT speak IT, and that's great. But oftentimes they're not the same. There's a lot lost in translation because our vernacular, our lexicon, our understanding is all very, very different. And this is one of the key objectives of this program, help us have that basic understanding, that vocabulary, so we can engage with them. Okay, it's not meaning that we can do their job for them. We still need them to be patient with us through our learning journey, but it should give us enough to have that courage to sit down and start engaging with them. I know we've got the soft skills. I don't need to teach any of us the soft skills that we need to have the courage to go and do that. We just need a basic understanding and some of that vocabulary, some of the vernacular, if you will, so that we can have some confidence when we go and talk to them about it. So I wish, I'd love to say you were planet right, but clearly you weren't, and we're having the same ideas about this, because I think it's a really important one for all HR people to be thinking of today about how we fill that gap. I see a lot of people working very well with their IT people. And that brings me to your very first question or comment around analytics. So I agree. I'm seeing a lot of noise from HR about analytics. We are learning as fast as we can, but we're not seeing it translate into practice as yet, not as much as we would like. There is a very different evolution, if you will, in analytics, whether we've gone through sort of the descriptive and the prescriptive to be able to come through to the predictive and the automated. In fact, at the end of the line of analytics is full automation, is, if you like, artificial intelligence. So there is a component of machine learning and artificial intelligence in an analytics, because what does AI do better than we do? It finds patterns. And what we're doing with this data is encouraging it and asking it to find patterns. Now, what we do need to be better at is asking questions and understanding how to arrange our data. The other thing that we need to do for analytics, and it links to tech, so we touch on how tech influences analytics. Understanding that baseline makes a big difference when we want to get into building an analytics dashboard. And that's, where is the data? We're not talking about cleaning and you know, the format of data, but actually data that relates to, that is relevant to human resources, is business data. It's not always the data that we hold. We've still got some way to go around our mindset in HR and all functions. We're not alone, where the data that belongs to the function is not our data, it's company data. And when we're looking at solving problems, asking questions, what data do we need? Now, the data, of course, rests in systems, not just in HR technology or HR systems, in all systems across the business. What systems we use, whether we're using augmented reality, IoT, so Internet of Things, RPA, robotic process automation, all of these are producing different data points that we could use. So the understanding of technology and data is very, very close. I believe that one of the ways that we can do better with analytics is if we understand our data, where we can get it, how we can use it. You know, what is warehousing? How do we need to organize our information? How was that applying from a dashboard perspective or from an analytics tool? What is it looking for? What parameters do we need to build into it to be able to manage the tool, manage the data? So the automation component and the analytics are actually very close together. We cannot learn analytics without learning something about technology. I do believe that learning more about technology will help us do better with analytics. We know the business, we know HR. If we have that third component, we'll be able to move a lot faster and with a lot more confidence, because no one, as I'm sure anyone who has done an analytics project like me, we can't do it without IT, which brings us back, Brian, to that comment that you made. We need to work with IT a lot closer and a lot more effectively to be able to produce anything in our business, particularly analytics.
Now, since you were talking about learning and technology, this is a good segue for us to talk about the program, I think. So on the next slide, we have the roadmap. So the components that you are going to cover on this course and how it plays out over the course of 2 weeks. So Pip, what do you see as the key highlights for this program?
So we've got 5 days. I'm going to give you 5 highlights. The first one is, why is it over 2 weeks? And that is so you can do some homework. Okay, so we believe very strongly in blended learning and the value of learning in your own time to enhance the in-class experience. There is no point in taking class time to teach you something you can read or you can do on your own. So this is why this program is structured this way. So because we respect HR are really busy people, we need to be able to structure our time so we can do both the pre-work and the class work and then the post-work. Okay, so the other component that we bring in very strongly is this has to make sense in a real life situation. So we've got the presentation at the end. It's like you do a project throughout. There's case studies and there's activities throughout the program, and a key question at the end. I won't mark you like I mark my university students, I promise. But you need something that you can walk out with that is relevant and useful to you, either to your organization now or for you in the future. If you can't, I know some people can't use their organization as an example. So that's why it's spread over 2 weeks, the first thing, and how we are leveraging the technology and what we know about learning to get the good balance between the two. The other component around it is we touch all the important technologies. So this is not going to be full of jargon. In fact, we have glossaries that are very simple and tools around this, just to make sure you know the terms. You have a basic understanding of how the technologies work. So this is not looking at vendors, this is looking at technologies. What are the tech that is driving? It's not looking at a tool that uses artificial intelligence, it's understanding how artificial intelligence works. So that when we come to look at vendors, which is the third part here, we know what we're looking at, okay? We don't buy the taglines. We don't buy the glossy promises. And that's the other component. First of all, the format. Second of all, touching on all those basic technologies, or 5 of them, make sure you know the terms. Second of all, how to wrangle vendors, how to work effectively with vendors with these new technologies. I see a lot of hesitance in how we as HR engage with these vendors. It's hard work. There's a lot of learning involved, both on the vendor side and our side. I saw this particularly when I was in an HR tech startup. So how can we design our program or our process internally for our business and then engage with a vendor rather than the other way around? It is an iterative process, but that vendor engagement piece has changed with these new technologies because we don't understand them like we would understand, say, a Workday, an HRIS. So the vendor management is another key one. The other one is around looking at the technology. So on day one, just getting into why are we doing this? Where is the value? We need to understand what are the risks and what are the opportunities of all of these technologies, not just for HR as a generalization, but for our specific business. And that's the other thing that we do. We look at both sides of the coin. So by the end of it, you will have an idea about how to structure your ecosystem for your business or for a new business, how to adapt it from the existing one. You will have a roadmap to do that. You'll have the language and the understanding and the technologies to be able to engage with your IT people and the vendors. And you'll have better skills to be able to go and work more closely with your vendors, and be a bit more astute, not be sold lemons, not be convinced into those glossy terms and phrases that they're so happy to use. So that's what we look for as part of the roadmap.
So allow me to summarize a moment. So we start off the journey with a bit of an overview around technology and how it's relevant to HR and business today. We'll then get an opportunity to explore each of the main technologies in the workplace, such as blockchain, RPA, AR, IR, and IoT. We'll get an opportunity to discuss a bit about the ethics behind it, about the risk management, vendor management, and what it means for implementation. And then an opportunity to end it all with a bit of theory to practice through a presentation.
Correct.
Does that sound fair?
Absolutely.
Okay. So with all of that in mind, then imagine we'll talk about the end bit now. So on the next slide, we're going to see the learning outcomes. So this is what we as a learner would like to be able to achieve by the end of this program. Mm-hmm. So imagine now, Pip, that I've gone through this program. I've gone through this 2 weeks with you. How am I different? How will I be transformed after this journey?
Good question, mate. Hopefully the transformation would have been a continuation or at least begun. It certainly won't be finished. I hope people will walk out with a newfound confidence about technology that comes from an understanding of it. I think that's one of the things that I'm seeing is the biggest gap for us, or one of the big gaps for us, is that confidence. it's easier to go and learn about soft skills than learn about blockchain, because where do we start with blockchain? The other thing is our mindset, our way, a relationship with technology. It has been changing, but I think we've still got some way to go. Most of our, the paradigm, the way we use technology today is the way we used to use it as an HRIS. You know, with the idea that one system, it's about control and stability, and we've seen it changes slightly with the idea of employee experience, but I think we've got a long way to go. I would hope that people, when they finish the course, come out with not just the understanding and the confidence, but a broader perspective of how these technologies are changing and can be used to change our workplaces. Okay, I really believe that HR has to have a voice at every technology that is being brought into our business, because every tech affects our people. Those are the technologies we should have an interest in. So it changes that paradigm, if you will. So I guess that's sort of where it comes to the appreciation of the environmental impact, both of the technology and on the technology. And with those understandings, we are able to build and design best fit ecosystems. Everybody knows today, best fit is not the goal. The goal is best practice. Best practice is not the goal. Best fit is the goal. So the purpose here is to understand, how do I build a best fit ecosystem? For example, if you're in a new job and someone says, great, I need you to look at our tech stack and make some recommendations, where do you start? You know, people should be able to leave this program with an idea about where to start, how to assess best fit and how to design it. And then how mostly to bring that human dimension back in. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but while I've worked in HR my whole career, and I love it, I actually think it's through technology that I'm going to be able to bring the human back. Because in some ways, that whole idea of bringing the human back to HR, I do wonder why we lost it. I know that efficiency and lean, all these sorts of things sort of pushed it out. But I really think that if we bring the human lens to technology conversations, we can make sure that we are contributing to the design of human-centric tech-enabled workplaces. And that's the journey, the transformation journey, I at least hope to start or to continue with participants in the program.
Lovely. All right, well, thank you for the very insightful sharing, as always, Pip. So I'm going to hand back to Charmaine now to help us with the next steps and to open up the Q&A.
Sure. Thanks, May, and thanks, Pip, for the very insightful sharing. In fact, it's true, you know, when I look at the earlier slides, it can be quite daunting, some of this terminology and jargons, and honestly, it can be very overwhelming. So I'm very happy to hear that, you know, in this program, a lot of these things is going to be make easier for HR practitioners to understand. You know, we are not technologists, but I think it is a very good first step for us to get to understand how tech can be applied in HR. So on this program itself, we will be starting the program on the 19th of October and ending on 30th of October. The fee for the course is at 2005. Early registration, in fact, has closed. But what we're going to do is, for all participants who have attended this session, you will be able to continue to enjoy the discount at 2001. If you are able to register within today or by Wednesday. So all you have to do is to scan this QR code for the registration of the class. If you have any other questions, you can always connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or you can email us at cipd@cipd.asia, and we will be happy to address any of your questions. Okay, so we're going to now move on to Q&A. Anyone has any questions? May, over to you.
Right, so the exciting part, the Q&A. Anybody got any questions?
Can I ask a question? Because when I was looking at the slides earlier, you know, really, I think Pete mentioned RPA. Are you able to expand on that a little? And how is that going to be applied in, you know, for in the context of HR?
Good question, Charmaine, thank you. So first of all, RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation. So let's break down the term for a minute. We all can think of little robots, so we think of robots, but it really is the bot part. So we know what bots are. They are things that are taking actions based on a set of rules, based on a set of parameters. We say, I see leave in the question, that's the answer. I give an answer around where the policy is. So if I ask, how much leave do I have? For example, it might give the policy link. So the bot component is looking for those patterns. The process is, as we know, so processes, payroll processes, performance management processes, think of all the processes separately we have in HR. And then the automation part, simply doing it without human intervention, some will say, but without the human component. It does it without us. Okay, so we know that there is something that is taking action based on rules for a process without us, automatically. That's what robotic process automation is. Now, if we think about the processes, so we start with the processes in HR, and we think about what processes have rules, very simple rules. Let's say in payroll, I get this amount, I take the download of hours put in a week. I then validate so that it is correct. We might be comparing it to a sales record or to something else to say, yes, that is correct. We go through it as humans, look at a spreadsheet, make sure, yes, that's right. We then migrate that to a payroll, and it goes, we will hopefully have a macro and it feeds all that information into the payroll system and so forth. If we were to use RPA, that process would be done automatically. So we would build the rules in to the bot, to the platform that said, when this comes in, check X, Y, and Z. Then if X, Y, and Z, do this. That's it. So it's actually breaking down the rules and of how to process something in the way that we would be thinking about them. So a lot of those processes that are very tedious, are very manual, and actually do have finite rules, the parameters are very easily defined. Those are ones that are very good for RPA, robotic process automation. In some cases, we will break apart a process and we'll say this component for RPA, then we want the human involved, then we want a different bot. We may get them to cross systems. So it will go from a finance system, for example, to the HRIS, or the other way around. So ordinarily we'd take an extract from that system, there'd be a manipulation, and then there'd be an import. That, if it goes with the same rules every time, that can be automated with RPA. So that's a very basic idea of RPA and how it can help us in HR. There is also intelligent RPA, which is really applying basic artificial intelligence to RPA. I'll give you a small example. In basic RPA, we would say an invoice number, say we get it from our vendors, our recruiters, our recruitment vendors. This is what it has to match a purchase request. You know, we raise a purchase order and the numbers must match for it to be able to be paid. So when the recruiter gives us an invoice. Now, we may know that that there is a certain amount of digits that are required, an alphanumeric string, so to speak, or list, and we'll say, pay those ones. Now, it might say that actually, if there is a slight variation here or here, you may also pay it up to X amount. So it is making a slightly different judgment call, the tool as it goes through. It's not a set parameter, it's a fuzzy parameter. And we're asking it to add a little bit of intelligence about what to do at the fuzzy parameters, the fuzzy edges. That is very basically where our intelligent RPA is going. It can be very useful in analytics, what Brian raised earlier on. This can be very helpful in analytics. That's why understanding the technology can make life so much easier. I hope that answers the question about what RPA, which sounds all very complex, I know.
It does. Yeah, thank you for that. In fact, it sounds like depending on where the organization is, right? So if they're just starting out, like what you said, a simple basic RPA automation could already help in the HR processes.
You are
And
absolutely
if the
right.
organization is a step further, they can start to introduce intelligent RPA and go on from there.
You're exactly right, Charmaine. In fact, RPA is, I'm really pleased you asked about that one, because it is often underutilized and because it's not understood. It's huge efficiencies. When we want efficiencies and accuracy in HR, this is the one to go for. Everyone thinks AI is the cool stuff and we have to be using that. Actually, no, RPA, very effective, very straightforward, very simple, but does require working with IT.
Thank you.
So a question that I have, if I'm an HR person and I don't really have much exposure to the technologies and I don't really know much about the technologies, is this program still suitable for me?
Yes, actually, it is only suitable for you. So if you get the tech, don't worry about it. So if you really know all of these technologies and you're fully up on the vocabulary, I'll be honest, don't waste your time. We'll have an extension program later on that will be more suited for you. This is not a program that is made for technologists. This is a program designed for HR people. In fact, to the point where an HR understanding is necessary. So we're always using use cases, case studies, even the language that we're using around HR assumes a knowledge in HR. Okay, so the HR knowledge is critical, not the technology knowledge. Absolutely. In fact, if you are at -1 on the technology, you're still in a good place. I'm assuming no understanding, okay, as we get into this. This is where I started, no understanding whatsoever. But the HR knowledge is there because this helps us bring it to life. Now, if we're talking about the tech, we want to be able to contextualize it. We want to understand the place that how we actually use this thing. Now, it's one thing reading what it could be used for in a completely different organization and function. What matters is how it applies to us. So we have to get HR.
Lovely. Okay. Any other questions?
I found that very, very interesting. I like what Charmaine was talking about there, because I mean, it sounds to me, and I don't really know very much about RPA, but RPA, it looks like that can be used by most organizations, you know, small, big, gigantic, whereas my feeling about the AI has always been that it's really for large organizations with many, you know, thousands of employees, if you're looking at particularly the predictive side of it, you know, but it sounds like the RPA can be used by any company.
Yeah, very effectively, Brian. You're absolutely right, very effectively. In fact, there are some programs, and I'm happy to share offline, that if people are interested in learning how to do it, that they can almost put it in themselves. A lot of these tools these days are actually built for anybody to be able to use them. We don't actually need IT as much as we think we do. Not that we don't want to work with IT, love our IT colleagues, but these tools are being designed for anyone to pick up and use. So it's a highly underutilized value for business today, any size of business. Just a small thing on the AI, actually, it can be used very effectively for SME, depending on where. It's the how and the where. The reason I think it can be useful is that some vendors specialize in SMEs, therefore the data that they're using to refine their models is aggregated across a lot of businesses.
Well, you have to stop reading my mind. I was going to ask that question. I was going to say, actually, it occurs to me that for the SMEs, if they're using macro data, and, you know, there's a body of knowledge from across the SMEs that can be valuable, you know, that maybe you can predict when somebody's going to leave an SME, and therefore you predict for your own company perhaps. But if it's only for 5 or 6 employees or 20 employees, I don't think the numbers would, you know, be robust across the piece. Yeah. And it would occur to me that Cipd might at some stage, or different industry bodies would perhaps in the future start to be able to collect that kind of data. I mean, depending on, of course, privacy, etc.
There's a lot of great information out there. I just want to highlight one thing about that, Brian. Sorry, guys, I know we're over time, but you know me when we get onto technology, and I can tell Brian is interested. So there's a difference between the data and the size of data that is needed to train the AI model versus its application. In fact, in some, it is okay applying it to a small data set. You will still get, as in most cases, useful information back. It doesn't have to be on a whole range, okay? It doesn't have to be a massive. So we think about AI, we need big data. You know, that's where the idea of big data, we needed, basically, it's just a lot of data. It's a great big pile, or as a lot of people call it, a data lake. So it's rather than a pond, this is this big data lake. All the information's chucked in there. Oftentimes that's where the models are trained, but not necessarily need to be applied. It depends. So it could be just as effective with a team of 15 as it is with a team of 1,500 or 15,000. You need to be able to engage with your vendor. Now, some vendors specialize in these. So the information they have that returns value to you is the aggregated information of all their clients. You know, because it's completely anonymized. By the time it comes back through, it makes little difference. It's a little bit like remuneration surveys. You know, we're happy to share with remuneration surveys because by the time it comes out, no one can tell which part, you know, who is who around rent. It's much the same. So there are some really good HR tech startups and small, medium-sized organizations that are specifically helping this segment of the workforce, of the business environment. Great spot, Brian, great spot. Love to have you in the program. You'll bring up really good questions with everyone.
Thanks, Pip, for that.
I found this, you opened an awful lot of kind of mental doors for me as you were, you know, sharing various ideas. I found it very interesting. I mean, there was another one that occurred to me was that HR aligning themselves a bit more with market research, because the market research departments in the big companies would have been doing analytics and this kind of stuff for quite a long time. And it occurs to me that there could be learnings that, you know, even if you had a market research person, if let's say a company had a market research department, if you had a market research person involved in some of the discussions around numbers, there'd be some learnings that the potentially less numerate HR people would be able to pick up.
Yeah.
You know, because back in many years ago, I used to work in sort of the market research area, and I can, you know, I'm sort of making some connections here based on sort of what you're saying, really.
That maybe not surprising that we were having similar thoughts, Brian, because very early in my career, I worked for a qualitative market research organization, in a boutique. We were for a lot of the FMCG companies. So you're right. And that was interesting because it was quantifying qualitative data and how they were analyzing it. Yes.
I remember the amount of time that I worked for Cadbury's, but the market research agency did a lot of automation around the reporting, and there was a lot of exception reporting that was all automated, you know, through them doing the programming at their side, and it saved us colossal amounts of time. That's where I sort of see some of the transferable, you know, thinking, as it were. I better shut up now, by the way. Sorry.
No, don't. She's worried about me shutting up and keeping us on time more than you, Brian, I guarantee. But you're right. There is huge learning from marketing. In fact, marketing was the first department that was affected by new technologies. And marketing today looks nothing like marketing of 10 to 20 years ago. It has transformed substantially because of these new and emerging technologies. So not only market research is there learnings, the entire marketing department offers learnings for HR around how we change our relationship with the data, the digital exhaust, if you will, of our employees. As they deal with the digital exhaust of consumers, we have the opportunity of dealing with the of using the digital exhaust of employees. How we do that, to be able to design these human-centric workplaces, that's up to us. That's our challenge for the next 5 years.
Thanks for that. So Brian, thanks for asking that question and sharing your thoughts on that. In fact, when you talk about data sets and all, it reminded me of an article that Pip wrote for us for Cipd Asia. It's an interesting read. It has got a conversation or discussion around artificial intelligence and data and how we use the data. Perhaps you can look at the article. It's on our Cipd Asia website.
Fantastic.
That'll be an interesting read. Yeah. So I think in the interest of time, unfortunately, we will have to end the session, but do send in your questions to myself or even to May or Pip. We'll be happy to respond to any queries that you have. Okay.
Thank
So I think we have just about enough time for our session now. So thank you everyone once again for joining us, and thank you Pip and May for hosting the session for us.
Most welcome. I look forward to seeing everyone in the program.
Yes.
Indeed. Stay safe and healthy.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. Have a great week.
Right.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
week ahead. Bye.